Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of the iOS Lead Essentials podcast. Here we discuss the strategies in your journey to become a complete senior iOS developer. My name is Bogdan, I'm a senior iOS developer and lead instructor in the iOS Lead Essentials program, the online training program for iOS developers who want to become complete senior developers. Today our special guest is Islom from Uzbekistan, a lead iOS developer and student of the iOS Lead Essentials program. Hi Islom and welcome.
Hi, Bogdan. Thanks a lot for having me. This is pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's also a pleasure. So Islom, can you tell us a bit about your achievements with the program that we can discuss today?
Of course, I've almost like 4 or 5x'd my initial salary since I joined the program. Program was so structured and explained everything that I needed for my day-to-day job to how to put it to scale the software development, which was very crucial to me. So only positive vibes that I've gotten.
That's quite impressive, I have to say. So congrats on that. And for you watching, just stay until the end and we'll find out how Islam did it and you can achieve it too. Our goal is to find replicable steps that others can follow to achieve similar goals. So, Islam, let's start with your background. Like, how long have you been a developer, an iOS developer?
I've been doing software development for some time, especially iOS. First of all, I did go through kind of a traditional way of learning things. Like I went to the university, I was taking courses in computer science, like compilers, operating systems. The first language with which I actually started was C++. I also learned Java, Python, and whatnot. So I was exposed to a bunch of stuff through this 4-year journey. Even had some chance to do some AI stuff during my last year. But the main thing that actually caught my attention was iOS because building iOS apps, drawing the UI, working with networking, that was actually bringing a lot of joy than writing stuff on C++ or Java. Yeah, that's why I just stick to iOS these days.
I totally understand that. Like, I have a similar background. Also, did some university study on computer science, a lot of C++, like you said. And then when you go to a platform, to a language that's even Objective C is a lot easier to deal with than just plain old C++. And um, so I totally understand that. But I guess it's also helpful whenever I talk to people that have similar experiences. At least they have a solid memory management understanding. They understand pointers, all of that. So it's a bit easier, I guess, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. So now that you're in this iOS development field, like how do you see your career progressing? Like, do you have some longer term goals that you want to strive for? Or
Of course. In my previous company, in my current company, I've been promoted to lead developer and actually leading the team, helping the managerial position to drive the releases and whatnot. Currently, I am really passionate about dealing effectively with legacy code because currently we are working in a very messy code base that like has very few tests. Like there were no tests actually when I joined, and this is the actual struggle that we're having. And my number one goal, like technical goal, is to achieve almost 100% coverage with the testing strategies explained in the program because they are actually fast, very reliable, easy to change because they check the behavior and they do not get into the structure of the code. And the other goal that I'm having currently for myself, like for as a manager, like as a lead, is improving myself as a leader and helping lead other developers by dividing tasks properly, helping each team member to work on whatever they want to work on what their interests. Because I always ask on one-on-ones, like, hey, this is our scope, what we are planning to do regarding the improving the code base, but also regarding the features. What are you interested in? Are you interested in CI/CD? Are you interested in writing some new features or improving the already written code base? So that's actually Um, I thought it would be easy, but it's actually hard because sometimes people say it's okay for me to work on everything, and then like you also want to make them happy. You also want to be yourself happy and also make the business all happy. So that's lots of um, how to put it, not struggles, but like good challenges that I'm having currently in my workplace.
Yeah, totally. I mean, trying to keep everybody happy is a challenge because usually something is gonna give, right? Um,
Yes.
but yeah, I understand, and I really like how you structure this. I know you think strategically, and you already divided your goals into like technical goals to just for yourself as an engineer, as a developer, but also working on the soft skills to be able to manage teams, to lead, which I think is very important to be able to just understand that and actually spend time on learning, on reading, on developing, just having like a feedback cycle where you see how things are going and you improve along the way. And my personal take on this is, especially in our case, right? I've done 4 years of computer science study. I have no year, 0 years of management and soft skill study, right? So when you're in a position where you have to use these skills, like it's a lot harder than to do technical tasks, which I've been preparing for my entire professional life for, right? So I think it's the same with you. So
Yeah.
that's why I think, especially on the soft skills, it requires more work. You will have less experience, and also dealing with people is a lot more, not necessarily challenging, but a lot more custom from people to
Delicate, right?
people. Yeah,
Yeah, from
delicate,
person to
exactly.
person. Yeah.
Because people are different. Like one thing that works with one colleague does not work with the other, and vice versa. And like you said, they have different agendas, different preferences. So to me, when I started to get leading positions, I noticed like a not one new problem, but like a variety of problems and challenges. Whereas technically, I wasn't ever that challenged, right? There was all kinds of things to juggle. A lot of people have, I don't know, things at home that aren't maybe allowing them to focus 100%. So you got to mitigate that. You got to mitigate their uh, overall goals, and if they make the right steps to get there, otherwise they'll be unhappy. So all kinds of things. Like as a leader, you can do so much for your team and for the company too. So yeah, I'm glad as you are a passionate person and just wanting to do these kind of things. I'm sure you felt some of what I'm saying already
Yeah.
and
Can't
more.
agree more. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, just having this in mind is definitely, I think, instrumental to being able to improve as a leader.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you're seeing them. I remember sometimes when I started leading teams, maybe I wasn't closing the feedback loop, so I wasn't always making sure that my good intentions led to good things. So it wasn't always smooth, but at some point I realized that and tried to correct, to adjust. So I'm glad you were already having this in mind. I like it. Okay. So how did you find out about the iOS 3D Essentials program?
Oh, that story is actually a bit funny because during my back during my junior years, I was very interested in UI because this is the first thing you have to touch whenever you come to the iOS, right? And I actually knew that there were some guys at Essential Developer having some sort of a course, and I was always thinking, why these guys aren't talking about the UI? It's the most important thing back in the days, like several years ago. And I was thinking, who would ever join this program? Like, why aren't they talking about the UI? This is the most crucial part in our software development cycle in iOS. And then after I guess 1 year, when I got a bit mature and I've seen a lot of struggle with manual testing, I was actually working on a Bluetooth plus AV foundation, which involved heavy use of camera, Bluetooth and whatnot, like audio playing at the same time. And you imagine getting that view controller, which has like 1,500 lines of code, which has like Bluetooth connection, sending audio, showing the camera, capturing stuff, saving to the disk, sending the network request. That was disaster, you know. Even though I was an only developer, I was trying so hard to maintain that. And I remember I even had a mentoring session with Caio and Mike at that time, and they were giving some sort of advice on how could I achieve that. That was actually super helpful, but like it was not enough. And then I actually understood there is something that I need to do with that, because UI is just like maybe 5 to 10% of the entire entire development actually in general. And this is actually how I got into following Essential Developer first on YouTube, watching their free content, and then like things actually start to come to my mind. The very important free playlist that I watched was the Clean Architecture, which was explaining how you could manage analytics. And I was thinking, wow, this is actually the thing that I need. Even though I had this kind of a light in my head, I didn't know clear path how to get there. And the deciding thing was that there was a crash course that they initiated. I can't actually remember when was that, but I really joined that crash course, like a Telegram channel, and was following every lecture. They had like 3 lectures. The first lecture was the struggles that Caio had. He was sharing his experience through the years. And the second lecture, where they were explaining with like lots of boxes and arrows from a single component to all of these components. And I was saying, oh wow, I thought this code was okay. Like it was the same stuff that I was writing, but like why it could have been even more problematic. And then after you actually draw the diagram, it kind of gives you the sense how many dependencies are there, what is actually the complexity inside that component. And then after they were refactoring the code base with blazing fast tests, like they were just like changing code, command you, everything is passing, commit, and then like at the end of the day, the diagram just contained one box, like 2 boxes and 1 arrow. That was pretty phenomenal, you know. And I was thinking, oh wow, this is the level of mastery that I'm really willing to get. And currently, I'm actually trying to get there. I hope I'm close.
Yeah, you are, and you put it perfectly. Exactly how it feels, the whole experience, the whole seeing that crash course and the program and all the things there. And yeah, I totally relate, and I think a lot of people can relate to the super powerful view controller that knows Bluetooth and audio processing, data storage, all of that.
And like I would add that the more you work in the industry and you go from company to company, nothing changes. You know, same massive view controllers without any testability in mind, with like lots of complexity in that. So someone got to fix that, right? Someone got to fix and make everyone happy, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's to some degree, I think it's just the consequence of Apple sharing some tutorials where they start to create view controllers and they add some logic to them. And the tricky part is, even in those tutorials, if you pay attention, like you said, if you start to draw a diagram, you see already they start to become bottlenecks for responsibilities, right? To like a magnet for responsibilities. But if you use just line numbers, you say, well, this view controller has only 30, 40 lines of code. Like for sure, it doesn't break any principles, right? It's clean, like it's only 40 lines. Well, if you draw the diagram, as you said, and I'm glad you brought that up, because it's a great example of just using a visual tool to understand the responsibilities, the communication, collaborators of a certain component. Unless you put that on paper, it can be paper, it doesn't have to be digital, just to see what's there. Then you start to, oh, interesting, like I didn't know this component was doing so many things. And then I guess it helps a lot with making the decisions. But like you said, many teams, many projects don't do that. So it's kind of natural for them to just add code to whatever classes they have, right? Most of the addition of code is in existing classes, and most of the classes are view controller. Therefore, we add to the view controller. Wow, yeah, it's interesting and challenging as well. I know I've been there many times, so I'm not here saying like, oh, now I know better, and everybody that's doing that is just plain old, I don't know, unskilled. It's actually something that nobody teaches you, and we're lucky to have this community and the program where these things are first-class citizens, if you want, just over and over, being able to get exposed to them. Okay, so you mentioned struggling with manual testing. Would you say architecture was another one of struggles or not?
It was actually a struggle back in the day when I joined the mentoring session. Like I had a view controller that had just like 5 or 6 dependencies, and I didn't see lots of problems with that, even though I, how to put it, squeezed down everything, but there were like lots of problems with RX Swift and whatnot. And after joining the program and going through all the steps, like you actually start to see certain patterns that help you identify bottlenecks exactly in code. You even do not need to draw diagrams because you get so much used to. If you see a large constructor, there is definitely something inside of it. And if there's no constructor, I believe there's even more problem because everything is created internally inside the view controller, and there's no way to test it. There's no way to replace it.
I think that's one of the key things that changed when you get exposed to all the content we have in the academy, in the program, is this attention to the small details. Like you start to understand subtle differences. Okay, how is this going to affect my code base, my separation of concerns, my number of conflicts I fix each day in Git, stuff like that, right? So
even like build times, right? If you are referencing that shared instance, let's say, once you change something in a singleton, which is another file, Xcode will rebuild your own file as well, right? So build time would get also slower. But just removing that and removing that connection to the concrete type, you like whenever that component gets changed, your view control is not rebuilt, which increases the build time, which increases the development cycle, right, as well. At the same time.
Decreases the build time.
Decreases.
Totally. We both know I've done some lectures on that, and it's like it's really interesting to see on projects that start on that journey of separating concerns, like splitting everything, using abstractions instead of concretions. That you see build times go down at a certain point. They just go down because now Xcode can really start using its parallelization power, build files at the same time. Like there's no more dependencies. When you change in a concrete implementation, you don't affect anything else. Maybe just the composition root, the app or scene delegates, stuff like that. Just a few files need to be recompiled. So it's just immensely, it's a huge change that you see there as well. And again, attention to details. Most developers maybe don't pay attention to how long the build takes. The build takes how long the build takes, right? Well, if you pay attention to it, you might have some impressive results there. So yeah, there's a lot of details and of effects that we basically can control through our small decisions that we make every day. So yeah, you told us about how you found out about the Essential Developer channel, then about the program. How'd you decide to join? Did you have second thoughts, something like that?
Yeah, of course I had lots of thoughts because at that moment, when I just knew about the program, my salary wasn't that good and I could not afford because my son was coming very soon, like being a father, like I was not really able to afford that. And how to put it, I was watching free content and like joining mentoring sessions. And that crash course actually changed my mind, and I thought like, hey, yeah, I need to get into this program to elevate my skills and hopefully break free of those like very low salaries. And the stuff that is actually really awesome about the program is the installment payment, which I actually took for 12 months. That actually did cost a bit more than the usual price, but at the same time, I was not really pressured into paying the entire amount like with a single payment, and I actually could allocate maybe like some part of my salary every month to actually repay that. And like in as I finished the program in like almost like 3-4 months, because I was like very passionate and like I was already exposed to so much stuff, I wanted to actually go through that and like crush it. I actually managed to increase my salary before I finished, and like at that moment when I increased my single salary was actually repaying an entire course. So this is actually how I uh, kind of journey that I took. Yeah.
Wow, so you were able to already see results even from the beginning.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, yeah. And that installment payment actually really help. I would say this is like really, really good that Essential Developer actually offers everyone who's willing to join the program, elevate and improve themselves via learning universal principles that work even outside of iOS. Even if you would like quit iOS, do like backend, everything works there 100%. And at that moment I was like so happy that I just like kept doing more and more. I actually finished the course multiple times and still rewatch to this day. Whenever I'm having like some sort of a thought like, hey, should I do this or do that, and I actually go to some of the lectures that I've watched, even to the code that I've written locally, to see, oh yeah, this would make sense, or like this would be some sort of a suboptimal solution, or this is the thing that would be okay now. So yeah.
I like this idea of continuous learning. I
Yeah,
guess
yeah.
it works so much better than just thinking that you went through something once and you got all right. And
Yes, yes. This is actually, I learned in the program that learning by relearning stuff that you have already gone through, right? If you read the book once, you maybe get 50% of the course, like as with the program. I thought that I've mastered everything when I've gone through the first time. Oh my gosh, I know everything. And then, like, after quite some time, I rewatched everything and I started seeing those subtle details. Like, I would say during my first cycle, I've understood maybe 60% of the program, because there were some really complex things explained inside, like with the unidirectional data flow. Try to bring everything in your mind. That's really crazy. And then you come second time, you see, oh, this is the thing that I really didn't
yeah,
notice. And then you come third time, and then you see, oh my gosh, this is the thing that I haven't seen in the my second iteration. And they're like, oh, things actually start to click. And this is the thing that I started applying in like other stuff apart from iOS as well.
yeah, it's awesome. It's a I guess it's a habit, right, of approaching studying. So you get that as well. And I couldn't agree more. It's so much different to apply that principle when you want to acquire something. I know I did it with a bunch of books, and it was really paying the dividends as well with the program. Even now, I've also gone through it a few times, and even now I sometimes just go through some of the lectures again, and even now I still have the aha moments, and like or like Caio said, like this wasn't here. Like I'm sure I've never seen this part, and like I've seen the video 4 times or something like that, and it's still something. Like you said, it's a subtlety. It's maybe a clue. It's maybe a like a term, a technique, and it clicks only then. And I think one of the reasons for that is you approach any studying with what you're dealing with at that time in mind. So if you're struggling with architecture, you kind of look at the architecture, you kind of look at these kind of things. Maybe you don't pay that much attention to testing, maybe you don't pay that much attention to other things, and then if you revisit later, you may be in a different state where you're more, let's say, more comfortable with architecture, and now you're more interested in, I don't know, writing beautiful code. I don't know, it can be anything. So then you pay attention to that part, you notice something. Or maybe you're at the part where you want to be super fast with Xcode, and you are looking at every shortcut, every trick there is, and you notice something, you know, like that kind of thing. So it's like wearing different lens when looking at something. So awesome. I think you already told me how you approach the program, like going to the lectures multiple times already, still using that. How'd you approach studying? Like, was it every day? Was it every now and then? How'd you do that? Because I know you're an ambitious guy, so I'm looking to steal some of your tricks here.
That's actually a great question. I would say sometimes I could approach every single day, like dedicating work time and time outside of the work, maybe in the morning before I start my work, or like in the evening after I finish my work. So it was like definitely very on a consistent basis. So consistency is very important, because if you watch just one video once a week, like you already forgot like what was there, right, next week. So consistency really matters, and like at least like spending and allocating 30 minutes a day would totally yield great results over time. This is 100%. That's like power of compounding, right? Over time. And I was actually dedicating more because I was already above average where I was hired, so I could finish my tasks earlier, and I would dedicate maybe 1 to 3 or 2 hours of my work time, and then outside of my work time, because I could finish tasks, maybe even over deliver at the same time and improve myself. I would also, how to put it, teach other people at the same time, like junior developers. During code reviews, I would argue a lot, saying, hey, we should do this. And like people would call me, hey, why are you saying this? And I would actually help them also as well. This was also part of the learning process, right? I was kind of trying to convey information that I learned, and that was actually helping me get better at the same time. But like one of the like most crucial examples I could give, like I have a car, right? And I, let's say, go to the shopping store to buy some groceries. And like here in Uzbekistan, it's very dusty. And I go to the car wash, right, to wash my car. And while my car is being washed, I wouldn't sit down and drink coffee. I would actually bring my laptop, sit there, watch the course, like, because it takes maybe like 30 minutes to an hour. So even at that moment, I would spend that time to go through the course, finish it by putting some deadlines on myself, like, hey, I need to finish this video by this date, so that like I could get also promoted in the community because of the belting system. Yeah, so these kind of goals actually helped me to achieve things really fast over like very small period of time.
Awesome. That's really awesome. I'm smiling because I really like seeing this dedication, this hard work, even like finding time when there's no time, right? So instead of just staying till waiting for the car to be washed, you can use that time. And I think I watched one full cycle of all the videos while running.
Oh,
So
wow.
during my morning runs, I would like, I think it was, I already saw them a few times, so I didn't need to look at the video, but I could just listen and make sure I'm in contact with that content and just go with it. I guess, yeah, at some point that was a kind of a routine. So whatever, like it's exactly in the same line, like you find time, right?
Yes,
You can
yes.
do. I usually don't recommend people to like parallelize things and try to multitask, but with an activity that you don't have to be super involved in, that you already can manage, you can definitely stack something else there and reap the benefits. And even with studying, is the amount of effort you put is one dimension to it, but also the amount of how many hours you get exposed to that content is also helping a lot, right? Just listening to that content, watching that content, applying here, applying there, like eventually your non-conscious mind, I guess, starts to make connections, start to create new synapses, and before you know it, it's like, oh yeah, I understand that. It's not that complicated as I thought or something. So it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot of time. I think there's also some literature out there about how much time to dedicate to a skill before you can master it. I think some say it's 10,000 hours, some say it's less or more, whatever. But again, it's a large number, so it's you have to put in the time.
Yeah.
There's no way around it. And I'm using your example because, like I said, I know and I see you as an ambitious person, as somebody that wants to not just finish the program but get the most out of the program and
Yeah.
approach similar challenges with the same mindset, which is very important to having those results that you mentioned. And just to like make a parenthesis, because I know you mentioned the belt system and some people might not know what you're talking about. So we have a belt system in the program in the academy, which is very similar to martial arts. You start as a white belt, and the end goal, the mastery, is at black belt level. And in between, there are concrete steps and
Yes.
progressions that we help you with so you can get there. And of course, it's about dedicating the time, dedicating the effort, but the belt system is super helpful. And I think it also just keeps people motivated, gives you some reward. So you got to the next belt, you got to the next belt. It's nice to see that somebody's noticing your progress and you're not just trying in vain. So that was my parenthesis for that. I really like the belt system we have. Yeah. So yeah, you again mentioned dedicating many hours whenever possible, maybe more than 1, 2, 3 maybe per day when possible. So at this pace, it's a strong pace. How long did it take for you to finish the program?
So yeah, as I said, around 3 to 4 months for the first cycle, and like cycles actually get even shorter because you were
Yeah,
already
yeah,
exposed, and you can actually type or even not type if you want, depends on you. But it's always better to type and sit down because like at least whenever you are typing, you are actually remembering how things
yeah,
are, like
yeah.
creating factory methods, creating extensions and whatnot, in tests as well, and yeah, something like that. But I remember during the iOS virtual day, Caio was kind of a breaking down into concrete number of hours. If you dedicate this much, this is the time it would take you to finish the program. And that's true because program is very verbose and it has a lot of stuff inside. And like, if you want to really get and rip every benefit of it, you actually have to do the work, right? You have to dedicate hours, find those hours, go through the program. It will actually pay off 100%. Like,
Yeah, yeah, I fully agree. Nice. So, just looking back at the first part of our conversation, where we talked about some of the issues you were having in the beginning of your career, like architecture, testing, and probably a bunch of others. How would you say that the program and the whole experience with the academy has helped you with these?
first of all, in terms of architecture, I only knew what was like MVC, MVVM. I've seen MVP, but never used that at that moment. And then you try to fit everything into MVVM, and those issues with Bluetooth, AV Foundation, and whatnot start to arise. And since I was very exposed to the content by the guys, even though I couldn't pay it at that moment, um, I was joining every mentoring session during crash courses, watching crash courses, and like ripping at least some benefit from them. But like after actually joining the program, I learned um, 4 types of testing that actually can streamline your entire release cycle if you actually get them right in place. So the hardest part is acceptance testing, but I guess this is like the final part that helps you glue everything around and like have very reliable test suite that doesn't require manual testing, and you can actually simulate almost everything. I would say apart from video and audio, but like those things can be tested separately. I would say most of the times people would not touch that part of the code, but like state management, network requests, UI, localization, right? Like if you are supporting multiple locales, that also gets very problematic as app grows and team size grows. Yeah, this is the stuff that I actually learned in the program. Every step that helps you take this code base that was messy and start improving step by step, and converting people in the team to actually believe that these things work. Because as a as like with every pull request, if you start adding like tiny tests, people start notice, right? Hey, there is some sort of a direction where the code base is going. Maybe we should take that, because releases are getting faster, less regressions, code is getting better, because the code base is kind of our home, right? We need to read it, we need to work with it, build it, ship it, and whatnot over time. And actually, like in my current company, like our testing target could not be built at that moment, and I actually took time to fix all of those build setting problems, build it, and then start writing tests little by little. And like over a course of 6 months, we have like several hundreds of tests, even though it's not really enough for us to make everything really stable. But this is like taking small steps. This is like very crucial, like consistency, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you made a very good point about just us developers at gatekeepers of the code base, like maintainers, and I don't really think you can do that properly without testing, because I know in my experience many times where I would probably know in my head how to improve a certain component, a relationship between components, but without testing, I maybe will try out an idea for a few minutes and then would see the complexity or some issues and say, oh, forget about it. This is too risky. I don't want to break anything. So just revert and move on with the next task, right? So that adds up, and over a long span, everybody makes the same decisions, and just tech debt. That's why we talk about tech debt, because that accumulates, right? And every suboptimal decision you make will have to be paid at some point. So that's, in my opinion, after seeing everything I've seen, I think that's mainly due to not having tests. When you have tests that you can trust, then you're much more likely to just do a small refactoring here. It's like Uncle Bob says, just make the code camp a bit cleaner, right? Boy Scout rule, just a tiny one. I'm working on a task for, I don't know, 4 hours. I can do a 15-minute refactoring. It won't, nobody would notice it, but I'm not going to make it unless I have the tests to back me up and to make sure, like, okay, this didn't break anything. So I think that's crucial when you have that state. So of course it requires an investment. It requires, especially with the legacy code base without tests, just adding those initial tests to an untestable code. So it's not easy, but when you do it, it's so much better. And the effects, the ripple effects, like you said, people in the team start noticing. They want to get involved. It's like it's cool adding tests. It's cool making tests pass, making small improvements, because then they have ideas as well. They always thought about this component could be improved in that way, but never wanted to risk it, right? So it's transformational. In my experience, whenever that happened, it was very nice to see, to be a part of that. Management was happy, developers were happy. Like, it's just a very nice story to be a part of. So okay, what I still want to learn from you is that you have so many good things happening in your career. So if you can tell us a bit about how you managed to achieve leading positions, at least on a few occasions. You mentioned a few salary increases, so I think it's helpful for developers that also want to change their careers around, to see how you did it. Maybe we can learn something here. So
Of course.
just
Like, in a nutshell, I was promoted to being a lead twice over maybe a year, something like that, over a year, I would say, my previous place and my current place. So the stuff that I learned actually from the program that actually helps to get to those positions is actually over delivering. Whenever you give instead of asking anything back in return, and you just give by doing things better, faster, taking more responsibility on yourself, like mentoring people, helping the business thrive and whatnot, people start noticing that. And after that moment, after you actually gave stuff without expecting anything in return, and then you ask for something, they would never give. They would never say no, right, to that thing, because the person is already capable of taking that responsibility and can actually perform at that level. Like, not to brag, like in my current place where I just joined, people, like the entire team was just being assembled, and I actually spotted an opportunity because there was no lead engineer. And as I said, like I fixed the testing targets, started adding tests one by one, over delivering, maybe, like, how to put it, by actually writing tests, implementing features a bit faster, um, constantly code reviewing, right, having those discussions with the team, having this connections, relationships, right, by actually explaining why I'm saying on code reviews why we shouldn't do this thing or that thing, and creating those bonds, and leading by example, right, whenever developing features, actually using those examples, writing tests, being like disciplined to delivering things, because people start to notice that, and they would start seeing actual benefits of that and converting themselves. Maybe they didn't know, or they were reluctant to being exposed to those things, but like after you kind of sit down, talk, like by pair programming, maybe huddling together, hey, this is the component, how could we improve it, and you share your thoughts together, and they start to say, oh yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. And this is how I actually got promoted, because if I'm not mistaken, the team voted for me to become a lead, in a nutshell.
that's excellent to hear that. So congrats, and I
Thank you.
think it's a great strategy. First of all, spotting the opportunity, but just having that mentality to say, I'm gonna over deliver, I'm gonna do the best work that I can. And of course, sometimes it wasn't your case. You have to pay a bit of attention to how the business, how the managers are responding to that. There are rare cases where, unless you ask for the raise that you deserve, you will not get it.
Yeah.
In other happier cases, they notice and immediate make like effective immediate changes to illustrate that. So again, it's a case by case decision, and you have to be aware of the whole picture. But I really like that. I really like that mentality, and it can apply to many other things. So just when
Yes.
you're involved in something, just do your absolute best if possible,
Yes. Yes.
and it's definitely gonna pay out.
Agree, 100%.
Awesome. And just to like maybe get a glimpse, what would you say are the most impactful things that you learned in the program? Like if you'd have to like name the top.
Of course. I would say architecture, which includes like solid principles, dependency injection, which is like, I would say, um, number one stuff that I look for almost everywhere. So it would be DI, solid, modular design, like modeling, design as well, like how you model your domain components, like how you model them as structs, as classes, how you put the properties and whatnot, which is very important as well. That actually drives the feature, right? And having this attitude of over delivering, of planning, because in lots of lectures there was explained like, hey, you should plan how you would be doing these things, because if you have no plan, you have no idea where you're going, right? Even by either if it's learning or improving some part of the code base or setting goals for yourself or someone else. So, and I would say, like, apart from all of those technical stuff that belongs to iOS, I actually learned very useful skill, I would say. I don't know whether any of the people who have gone through the program share, like, I've actually learned how to approach any problem with trade-offs in mind, regardless of whether it is related to software development or like real life problem. So right now, after completing program multiple times, I know that if there is a problem, I always know how to find a solution to that, and I know which solution to choose, because I've been exposed so much to this critical thinking, right? Whenever you architect the app, the feature, or like where to put that. And whenever the problem arises in real time, you think, how can I actually solve this problem in the most optimal way with like the least trade-offs in mind, right? So this is the kind of stuff I also extracted for myself personally. That was like super helpful. I'm still using it every day, regardless of which problem I encounter.
And that's awesome. That's a skill that I guess everybody should benefit from having. So I guess you kind of created that for yourself, right?
Yeah.
It's very very nice. And to go on that line, like any advice that you would give our viewers that maybe want to have similar transformations or they just want to progress in their careers, like what would you say is instrumental?
I would say the number one thing that would help anyone is having a student mindset, right? Regardless of how many years you are in the program, just thinking that, hey, there is something new to learn, and maybe I might not know something new that could help me, right? Having the student mindset would actually really help, because um, as I see in my personal experience, as you meet people who have more years of experience, it's hard to, how to put it, convey that these things work, because maybe they have never tried like doing TDD, applying solid principles, dependency injection, modular design, having continuous integration and continuous deployment really set up in place. Maybe they've never seen that, but maybe they are reluctant because they've been so much time in the industry and they think that this is the status quo. But like having the student mindset would actually help getting exposed to all of those things. And the second thing is just consistency, right? If you put the hard work into use, like 100%, you will yield results like me or like any of us in the community. And like communities there to help, right? Explain if there was something subtle stuff that you could not understand, like everyone is there to help, like regardless of whether this person has completed the program or it's just like just completed the part that you are watching right now. So everyone is just like very supportive in that regard.
Awesome. Yeah, that's awesome advice. And I would also recap another piece of the advice that you gave earlier about consistency,
Yeah.
about just putting in the hours, ideally on a day-to-day basis, because then you have this accumulation effect as well, and
Yeah.
you can really feel the difference. But yeah, your advice is very good, like how to approach things with a student mentality, if you want, just be open. And yeah, and I understand the reluctancy, especially in seniors, that probably maybe try testing, let's say, try to apply it, and ended up with some tests that had to be fixed constantly, that didn't give them any safety, that always required work and were hard to write, hard to maintain, flaky maybe. So if you'd had such an experience, then you'd say, no, testing does not work. Testing is not for iOS, because I've tried it and it doesn't work. But as I was maybe giving an example earlier, if somebody just explains you how to swim and you jump in the water, you won't be able to swim, right? You need to practice, you need drills, you need guidance, you need maybe some some accessories in the beginning, like on the bike, like you need the small wheels at first. So it's like that with some more difficult skills. You won't get them from the start, and unless you get guidance, it's really tough. You can learn how to swim on your own, but it's a lot easier with instructor, right? So it's kind of the same with the skills we're discussing here, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, people have the experience they have. So if they had a better experience, then they are even harder to have that mentality, open-minded mentality that you mentioned, that bias. But even if you do, just give it another shot. Like, I think,
Agree.
yeah. Awesome. And if there's anyone trying to reach you, like a company or an individual, like how can people find you?
I have my own YouTube channel, so I guess anyone could post comments. I try to be consistent also by delivering some free stuff that I've learned even through the program or in my personal experience. Yeah, by creating videos like helping solve problems, and I guess on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me, for being open about your career, your struggles, your journey, everything. Thanks for sharing. I really enjoyed talking to you today.
Thank you a lot for inviting me. That's been just pleasure for me to share all my thoughts and what I've gone through, because yeah, that's the real stuff that happened, and I'm just willing to help others to progress as well. Why not?
Awesome. For people watching, if you want to learn more, just visit us at essentialdeveloper.com, and there you can find a bunch of free resources to improve your iOS dev skills. And you can also find us on the social channels, YouTube, Twitter, and so on. See ya!